completed the first 4 segments of today's program. We will now proceed further.
Tata yikja kene chewe ngidi tata nganzu jikdong gubje shibju shibdu jinda juwe tse chula ani tata nganzu pyo ki gesap dara rinpoche cho da ani tata nganzu kunde jibshi bachimbu cho ki sabisi go la pyo ki chakri di ani ngaranzu pyo ki dimdo kaan la shandep naro na lan begi shiwa shisung ani dawa jiks je la jinda ngawa nanglo la ani koranzu nangmi la pasu nanggi pasu tudu chungche ani jike 지금서 거기 시시 중외기 땀상디 당하란수 비미 직주기 고래 용기 섭슈제 닝타고는 터진낭신 슈이
왜나래 옛날 무슨 마치 뭐 요말다 간주기 최다 리슝 간주기 계랍 르주 딱 간다 비미기 ngo부터 상원자매 땅에 두슬레인도 다 인지나는 무슨 베트 낭감을 봐 since ancient times seems time immemorial 다 야나기 차시 인세기 딘데 잠레진 다 베트가 슈메서에게 두지 딘데 직갑이야 아니 간주 단다 사 바실 골 코라 아니 인지기 단다 되지 런시 차지는 별이야 집이나 토에다 텐카시 집이나도 와 대시브ring이 르주도 시험었을 때 텐카시 집이나 요다 학바도 군류기 단다 시딩아스 갑을 집이나 진 디갑기 안 중림디기도 코란기다 인지기는 뭐소나 first hand account 있다 단다 뎁디나조 jewel in the lotus said na tuske na jin yore dige te dang anju luju ki nal yata first hand account wa luju nal ta chashi ge chimbu ji da ani ding anju 베디 아니 갑디도 갈이야 랑제 라와랑제 짱만 이 계급지 오리야 나라 수진용 치대비 대급 진도 갈다 띵은 루주나니 아 갑디도 기내다 토니야 루주나기다 가서 두주 계신 부직다 두주다 간다 간주 전문은 뜬트베기다 간다 내가 전부 차비도 갈라 간주 디 고디도 쉬어야 쉬인다 디 중림도 남부도 단기 쉬나 시리 디 간주 점점 gen진의 주 송요를 봐 직디르다 니부들이 간주 단다 요즘 점점 칸딩이 가두이는 단디와 용야 고급이 있나래 나도 점점 칸기 gen진데 아니 간주 중반 대유래 간주 가두이는 데와 고도 제비 갑은 간주 점점 칸디 아니 점점 칸 신다는 시 메인 부채 신다 주준다 지단 루주다 직 최다 리슌데 지부된 간주디 탑주된 데와 유비기 점점 칸 차디거레스 비미 탑주된 데와 유비 점점 칸 인도가는 간주기 디나리아 직 거기엔 점점이나래 아니 두둔 점점이나래 지단 리슌 제기 점점기 간주기 주시 가리임이나 디 삼루티 갔다 간주 베베기 짜된데 데와 유비 간주 가진 삼당 우두스인데 쇼여 봐 지도다 단대레 딩외랭 간주 두둔 점점 망부지 간주 베베 짜된다 베베 루주다 디주 태간 데와 유바 딘데 차디요래 안 디토리네다 남부수디 망부지는 딱바이 두스 갈소리 투나나 지진 두스 집이난 게요래 델이야 간주 직 점점 칸던 데와 유베 토니야 지게 공자나야 딘데 양지게 딘데 가리 유베나로 봐 레베 니고 공자나야 가리 유베나 디수 간주 가두 있는 땅으로 지신 간주 보기도 주고요. We are facing a very difficult situation because of the Chinese occupation now that they are trying to decimate Tibetan identity like so Sir Basil Gould's episode of his forays into Tibet and witnessing the enthronement ceremony of His Holiness was a very important part of our history, which proves that Tibet was at that point of time was a de jure and de facto an independent nation, independent country. The historical significance I would like to share with you is the year 1947 stands at the threshold of immense global transformation. As empires recede and new nations emerged, Tibet was actively engaging with the international community to assert its identity and position in a rapidly changing world. Sir Basil Gould, as the British political officer in Sikkim and a key interlocutor between Tibet and British India, occupied a unique place in this relationship. His engagement with Tibetan leadership was not incidental. It reflected a sustained diplomatic exchange rooted in mutual recognition and dialogue. The letters we present today illuminate the relationship with clarity and authenticity. The letter from Tata Rinpoche reflects the official voice of the Tibetan government during the Regency period. It speaks to the governance, diplomacy, and Tibet's engagement with external powers at the time when His Holiness the Dalai Lama was still young. The letter from His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, written in the same year, carries a different yet equally powerful significance. It represents continuity of leadership, of vision, and of nation conscious of its place in the world. Together, these letters affirm a simple and profound truth. Tibet conducted its own foreign relations, communicated directly with international representatives, and engaged diplomatically as a distinct political entity. The relevance to Tibet's struggle today, as we reflect on Tibet's ongoing struggle, these documents assume even greater importance. They are not merely historical artifacts, they are evidence of Tibet's political agency, its international interactions, and its voice in global affairs prior to 1950. In contemporary discourse, where narratives are often contested and distorted, such primary documents become anchors of truth. They help us reaffirm our history not as a matter of interpretation but as a matter of record. For Tibetans, especially younger generations born in exile, these letters serve as a bridge to the past that is often denied or obscured. They remind us that our struggle is not only about present, it is about preserving the identity of our integrity of our history. And for the international community, they offer an opportunity to engage with Tibet's history through authentic and documented evidence. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Sikyong. Thank you very, very much for welcoming my husband and myself here today. It's a real honour to be with you all. Chapter 2 of Sir Basil Gould's memoir, The Jewel in the Lotus, entitled Tibet 1912 to 1913, starts, "If anybody had suggested that I was likely ever to see Tibet, I should have laughed. It was all due to half a brick." That same half brick is actually what brings us all together here today. If my grandfather had not stumbled over half a brick behind a tennis court, he might never have gone to Tibet. But the job of British trade agent at Gyantse became vacant. There was nobody else available to fill the post, and the prospect of a few months in the cool of Tibet, compared with the heat and noise of a Calcutta hospital, seemed very attractive. Thus began his long association with Tibet and its people. Indeed, it was during this time that he accompanied the 13th Dalai Lama part of the way back to Tibet from his 2.5 years' exile in India. It was also during this spell as British trade agent that Sir Basil was tasked with bringing 4 Tibetan boys to England to provide them with 4 first-class educations at Oxford College, London. The idea to bring the young Tibetan men to England had been discussed by the 13th Dalai Lama when in exile in India with Sir Charles Bell, who was then political officer in Sikkim. These 4 boys became known as the Rugby Boys, as it was at Rugby School that they were educated. The youngest of the boys, Ringang, went on to study engineering at London and Birmingham universities. On his return to Tibet, he was responsible for setting up a hydroelectric plant near Lhasa. He also served as an interpreter for the Kashag and British officials visiting Lhasa. It may well have been his father's association with the Rugby Boys which inspired my own father to invite young Tibetan refugees to spend time in England with our family. Thus it was that I grew up with several Tibetan brothers and sisters. Nima, Chimi, Lobsang, Kesang, Yangchin, and Tsering Shakya, the now eminent historian, all lived with us for various amounts of time, and were the most delightful, smiley companions. Like all children who know no better, I took this to be completely normal. But in the countryside of southern England in the 1960s and 70s, it was, of course, highly unusual, and it awakened my lifelong interest in Tibet and all things Tibetan. I even, aged 8, did a project at school about how the 14th Dalai Lama was found, using chapter 16 of my grandfather's book as my primary source. I am certain no other 8-year-old in the whole of England in 1967 would even have heard of Tibet or the Dalai Lama. I found the story totally captivating. Little did I know then that 60 years later, my husband and I would be given the incredible honor of being granted an audience with His Holiness yesterday. I find it astounding and deeply moving that Sir Basil was present at His Holiness's installation in Lhasa in 1940. My parents were granted an audience with him in the 1970s and met His Holiness again in Zurich in 2005 and Oxford in 2008. And now we have had the same honor in 2026. One life, 3 generations of my family. Perhaps I should again quote my grandfather's book, where he describes his first audience with the boy Dalai Lama in 1940 at the Nobulinka. I noticed the steadiness of his gaze, the beauty of his hands, and the devotion and love of the abbots who attend him. All seemed to be aware that they were in the presence of a presence. My father, who was born in Shimla in 1922, died in 2014, and Sir Basil's second wife, Lady Cecily Gould, died a few years previously in 2009. She lived in Yarmouth on the Isle of Wight, a very small island off the south coast of England. When the Dalai Lama's mother had to have an eye operation in London in 1960, Holy Mother recuperated on the Isle of Wight with my step-grandmother. I am sure the sea air did her a great deal of good. Both my parents and my step-grandmother and her son visited India several times to retrace some of Sir Basil's steps. And so it was after their deaths that Johnny, my husband, and I felt the need to make our own pilgrimage in 2019. Amongst other places, we visited Shimla and found the little English church in the grounds of the Viceregal Lodge, where 100 years or so previously, Sir Basil and his then wife Lorraine had my father christened. However, it was after my mother's death in 2024 that we had to sift through all my parents' documents and possessions, finding papers and items I had never seen before, relating to Sir Basil's work in the Indian political service. I had grown up with tankas hanging on the walls of our house, and the marvellous watercolours painted by Kanwal Krishna, who accompanied my grandfather in 1939-40 to Lhasa. His paintings of the installation ceremony, the Dalai Lama's family members, and attending dignitaries adorned the walls of our house, and his wonderful oil painting of the young Dalai Lama on his throne hung above my parents' fireplace. But now we found so many more items, including the 2 documents at the centre of this exhibition. When we first opened them, we had no idea what they were. In perfect condition, beautifully folded many times, they had lain untouched for over 70 years. It was only when they were examined in London by experts that we had any idea of their importance. Therefore, after being approached by the Tibet office in London, I had the great pleasure of handing them over to Sikyong Penpa Tsering in July last year. It is absolutely wonderful to see them exhibited here, where they should be, demonstrating that in 1947, both the United States and Great Britain considered Tibet to be an independent, sovereign state. I hope these words have demonstrated just how much Tibet and the Tibetan people mean to me and my family. Our present trip to India was inspired by this exhibition. We have tried to retrace some of my grandfather's footsteps, from Kolkata to Gangtok, from Delhi to here. We are deeply indebted to all our friends at the Tibet Museum and the Department of Information and International Relations for their wonderful hospitality, enthusiasm, and most especially for organizing yesterday's remarkable experience of the audience with His Holiness. We thank you all.
점등한기 갱킹에 당 레지 상물어리아 투시신 슈이 그래서 점등한디 고 여버지고 팽미도 그 배주의 천된 지역들 조선 모슈 땅 차버리 아니 배주의 천된 지용에 당 점등한디 균에 표동 거리아 당 고도 강 투두직 연구야기 배정기 차시 나눠네 아니 거기를 배야리 다는 신데리아 두 윤드네 점등 여배기 토라 아니 두 동기 점등 우리 쉬야 전주에 주심이라미라 토라 쉬제 아니 다른 데다 하고도 계시면 차고 요래 그래서 그 유도 저 여배기 내주신데 단다다 권도 소문나 신천에 나니 딩엘이야 군주 자라 망부직 종약 토나 대체 딩아주 시험을 총알이 근데 바 전주 균의 슈버당 페네파 잉글랜드 용액이 표가 같이 있다 tsering 바상아 그래서 제가 같이 이게 그 슈제는 콘저트 수나야체 단다 프란시스코 소문나 신신 단인치는 메나리아 안수 랑송 다수 된데 슈에디 커진 간데 된데 슈면 알 캐치마송 지단 이제 대시 개첨불이 야 콜리아 도당도 오지 용되기도 와 근데 좀 쉬우지 지라체되고 있는 팬도 유배 미신 오늘이 당에 비나는 단다 페이지 겐지다 총지다 아니 참에 송초수 대등에 담미세 비나시다 슈모체 I think Francis can I call Francis Gould instead of yes I'll call him John Gould.
Feel free.
So John and Francis Cutler, thank you very much for coming here. It's not even 1 year since you handed over the document to our Office of Tibet, London, and the Tibet Museum has already decided to have this exhibition, and that's also the reason why you are here. I think this visit would have been very memorable for your family as well, retracing the steps of your grandfather. I would have appreciated if you had gone to Kalimpong also. It was just 2 hours drive from Gangtok. So since you are already there, anyway, next time. So this is a part of British-Tibet historical relationship. It's just a small part from 1912 till Sir Basil Gould served Tibetans. And I think went up to 1948 when the first Tibetan trade delegation went to India, China, United States, and UK. So, in fact, they went to United States first. I think they reached Honolulu on 4th of July, 1948. So I remember the date because 4th of July is American Independence Day. But unfortunately, ironically, we lost our country 2 years after that. So that was also the time when the Tibet trade delegation met with Prime Minister Attlee, and Sir Basil Gould was also there. So this is also part of our history. So when I visited London last, we now thought of reaching out to UK more than other European countries because most of the instruments they use in European Union are on human rights and religious freedom that don't touch political issues about nationalities and independence and all that. So our relation with British India goes back to 1774. The first Scottish person to come to Tibet, Charles Bogle came to Tibet in 1774. So from that time onwards, there have been, of course, quite a number of explorers who have come into Tibet, including Thomas Manning. Supposed to have come to Lhasa, but I didn't see much record of that. Maybe I can ask Tsering later about that. So there have been visitors to it, but not too many from the Western world. We can count the number of people who came to Tibet over the years, over the centuries from, let us say, 16th century, because the first person who was supposed to have come to Tibet was Friar Oderic of Parthenon, so in Italy. But some records say that he has been only to Monge Khan's court, not to Tibet. And then there was also another Jesuit monk who was supposed to have crossed Tibet, but there were also stories going against his narration, because he has described Tibet as a very, developed civilization with paved roads and all that. So the question is, if Tibet was so developed at that time, then why is it not so now? So those arguments are there. But then, of course, the first known foreigner to have come to Tibet was a Portuguese. Then they also built churches in Tibet, first churches in Tibet in 1626, around that time. Then 17th century we had Italians. Then later we had French monks, then Americans and all that over the years. You mentioned about the Tibetans in 1912, rugby in London. Not many people have seen. But I think the first Tibetan who went to Scotland was in 1901. There is a Scottish lady called Annie Royal Taylor. She was a Scottish nun. She traveled to Tibet in the 1890s. Yeah, and she was a lady. She traveled by herself. A very risky proposition at that time. So Annie, to prove that the articles that she brought from Tibet were authentic, she took one Tibetan to Scotland to show this is a real Tibetan person, and these artifacts are from Tibet. So I think you can see most of her collections in Glasgow University in the north. So those stories, those connections are also there. Then, of course, the 1904, 03, 04 young husband expedition, and then your grandfathers posting there, His Holiness returning back from India. There were also Britishers involved in negotiating between the Khampas and the Chinese on the eastern border in 1918 also. So there are a lot of historical relations between Tibet and so I was talking with some of the scholars in London to write a book on the historical relationship between Tibet. And we need to remind the new generation of political leaders in United Kingdom about the historical connection between Tibet and British India and UK, so that we can move on to other countries in Europe who doesn't have that much relationship, of course, with France, Alexander David Neil, and all did in the later part of 19th century. So all these stories also help when we go for advocacy work. So we start with, British and Tibetans, we have been having relations. So all this helps in building up the communication. And I think we need to change the mindset of the British politicians on the historical facts of Tibet. So this is something we will be doing, and I don't want to repeat what they've already said. Really very thankful for your generous contribution to the Tibet Museum on these documents. After that, there were some more documents that were auctioned, including one document which talked about the 13th Dalai Lama, when the 13th Dalai Lama was to return back to Tibet, and all the Chinese Qing forces were to be removed from Tibet. It was around the same time, when then it was Ladinla who negotiated to leave the arms and ammunitions of the Chinese army with the Nepalese representative, and then send on all the Chinese army through India, not through Eastern Tibet. Now, we could not procure that document, but this is another, not your collection, but it's another collection from another document. It was priced at 7,000 pounds and sold for 37,000 pounds in UK. And we don't have possession of that, but then, of course, now we all know that these documents exist, and these are important historical evidence. particularly those missionaries and foreigners who have been in Tibet when there were a lot of historical turmoils going on in Tibet, particularly in the early 18th century, those become very valuable evidence for Tibetans to support our case. So, every one of you, how about the younger generations of Tibetans, the more you understand about your history, and then you will be much more capable of advocating for Tibet. If you don't know your past, then it's very difficult to talk about the present and future. Therefore, I urge everybody to read Tibetan history, particularly Sir Basil Gould's book, The Jewel in the Lotus, and also British officers who have served under Sir Basil Gould, like Hugh Richardson, Henry Ford. So there were a lot of people who were witness to Tibetan history during those times, and I think these are very, very valuable things. I myself personally have read a lot of books written by pilgrims, the missionaries in Tibet, and that gives you a totally different dimension and understanding of Tibetan history. So all these, the more you read, the more you try to understand, it'll help you. I'm not a historian, I'm not a researcher, but I'm a history buff, definitely. So I try to read as much as possible and I understand as much as possible. And that also helped me in framing policy for the Central Tibetan Administration. So you should also be doing the same. Thank you. Thank you very much again.
Mrs. Frances C. Cutler and her husband.